Hello and welcome to the Cowboy Chronicles, the Oklahoman's Oklahoma State football podcast. I am your host, Scott Wright, joined today by special guest, Marshall Scott.
Assistant to the assistant guest.
Exactly, yes, that's right. Marshall Scott of Pistols Firing, PFB. What do you prefer?
I say PFB usually, Pistols Firing, and then if you say Pistols Firing blog, it just kind of gets too long. So
Right,
I like
yeah.
to stick to PFB when I can, but anything.
PFB's Marshall Scott joining me on the show, and as you can tell if you're watching on YouTube, we're back at Stonecloud, and it's a fantastic day. With that, we do have some complimentary beer that they provided us with. What'd you go with here? Your first time on the podcast?
Neon Sunshine at your recommendation. Not a big beer drinker, so definitely lacking from Jacob in that aspect of it. But let's do it.
Well, in general, that part of the show is taking a real dip this year because even I can't compete with Jacob's love and understanding.
Yeah,
of
understanding,
craft beer.
definitely.
Yes, exactly. In fact, I forgot the name of the beer that I ordered at the recommendation of the wonderful people here at Stonecloud. Mutekyanek. It's an Imperial IPA that I'm very excited about. She loved it, so here we go.
I love Star Wars. Imperial, that's
Exactly.
what the stormtroopers are drinking.
Exactly. So there you go. Really good stuff. Really good to be back here. Very excited. Going to try to be here on a weekly basis. Not sure how often Marshall will be able to join me. It would be kind of a rotating door.
Yeah,
but
I'm happy being a bullpen arm. I'm happy being a starter. Anything that you need from me,
awesome.
I'm here for
Good
it.
deal. Glad to have you here. We want to. I've been promising for the last couple of weeks that I will get back to our winners on the predictions from previous podcasts. The week one winner was Eric. He predicted Oklahoma State 42-17. Of course, they won 44-20. That's been a long time ago now.
Yes, 44-20.
44-20. And last week, Chief almost nailed it. I mean, this was so close that I had to go back and double check the timestamp to make sure he hadn't slipped this in after the game. Chief had 37-30. Of course, it was 39-31, double overtime. If he had thrown in double overtime, I really would have. He would have been out.
If he would have said Arkansas outgains Oklahoma State nearly double yardage,
Yes.
he could have got really specific on that if he was truly a time traveler.
That's exactly right. Lots of Arkansas picks in the podcast. The podcast last week somehow ended up on an Arkansas message board or something. Lots of Arkansas picks.
There's a lot of those people out there. There's a lot of. I think we learned that anytime baseball is playing them, there's a lot of Arkansas baseball fans come over. Even basketball a couple years ago, a lot of it. And then just last week, I think it was on 4 Arkansas podcasts, and you just kind of lose the scope of it because we're so focused on OSU that Arkansas is a big deal over there. So.
It absolutely is. So with that, a reminder to jump in if you're on YouTube, throw your score predictions for OSU Tulsa in the picks grid, and next week we will drink a beer for you. But these two are for Eric and Chief, so cheers to you guys. Great job on your picks. All right. With that, Marshall, let's revisit.
Okay.
This show is not long enough to encapsulate the entire OSU Arkansas game.
Yes.
One of the craziest games that
I've ever seen.
Yes, absolutely. What are some of the big takeaways though that stuck with you after that game?
Yeah, still, I think more concerns maybe than positives. It's good if you're Oklahoma State that you found a way to win. I think that comes down to, as boring as it sounds, culture, toughness, consistency, Rob Glass, things along that nature. But not being able to run the ball, still getting them up big plays on defense. I think those are the two most glaring things. I went back and watched the game again yesterday because there was so much information. I had to dump some of it to keep taking in information on Saturday. A lot of the running lanes I found, and I don't really know what this means, but it was they had the hole covered. It was the cutback that they'd missed, and that's kind of hard to tell from the press box. We almost watched the game in 2D.
Right.
So that was a little bit better in the second half, I could tell. So I think that you're hoping, and this is what Mike Gundy said today, that things are fixable. Right. And I think while the game was happening, it didn't look fixable. It looked like they were getting bullied up front.
Right.
And watching that they kind of had those holes covered, but they didn't have those cutback lanes covered, that made me kind of feel like there was a little more schematics than just being out-personnelled. So I think you feel good about that if you're Oklahoma State, but at the same time, you gave up 648 yards total offense and barely found a way to win a football game against a guy that's on the hot seat in Sam Pittman. So I don't know if there's a ton of positive takeaways, but at the end of the day, you won the game. And you just kind of keep it moving. You hope you figure some things out.
A couple of things. I want to come back around to Rob Glass, who you mentioned. But the yardage number was surprising to me only in that the second half they almost had 300 yards.
Yeah.
It felt like the defense played pretty solid
Yeah.
in the second half. Only give up the 10 points in second half and overtime total. but they were still giving up a lot of yards. It didn't feel near as bad, but it was still right up there.
Yeah, it seemed like Arkansas and the running back was getting cramps all day long. That was something that at the broadcast it was more obvious to me than it was at the time. But it seemed like they could have just gave that guy the ball and gotten 8 yards a carry. So I was a little confused why they kept throwing it as much as they did, why they kept putting it in Taylor Green's hands. He's an electric athlete. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. But it just seemed like they were maybe doing too much, Arkansas, in that second half. Whenever, in reality, you just had to turn around and hand the ball off, and you're probably going to get 8 yards. So, yeah, it felt like the defense played a little bit better in the second half. But, yeah, I looked at that as well. It's like, okay, well, halftime adjustments. And you go back and look at the stats, and they were still giving up quite a bit of yards in the second half.
Yeah, and you went the other spot I was wanting to go. Jaquin Jackson, I didn't realize it was cramps in the moment. He was not out there late in the game for some really important series because of that. We saw a lot of that with South Dakota State, which we expected because they're coming from a place where it was average 79 degrees most of August.
Yeah.
Then they got in this crazy humid day and it's just baking on the turf. That was a little bit expected. For Arkansas to have issues with that, that's why I wanted to come back around to Rob Glass and Mike Gundy pointed it out in post game that their conditioning was a big part of this, and I absolutely think it was their ability to stay focused when you're dealing with all those things. Gundy's talked about that. When you get tired, your mind is the first thing to go. They were making smart plays still, where Arkansas was making dumb mistakes, and those were things that flipped this game late and allowed Oklahoma State to be in position to win the thing, which I went on a radio show this morning, and the first question was, how did Oklahoma State win this game? That's the question I still can't answer.
Yeah, I've got no clue on that still. And even Mike Gundy today, essentially his opening statement said, we're lucky to get out of that thing with a win.
Right.
And it's like, from every metric, yes. You look at just about everything except for the final score, you'd have thought not only did OSU lose this game, but that OSU lost it somewhat handily.
Right.
So yeah, how Oklahoma State won the game, turnovers, I think is probably the thing you point to.
Yeah.
Shout out to Hudson Cock and Shea Frybaum, and that Arkansas gunner who decided to spill right in front of the guy. I think that was as much of a factor in that play as anything. But yeah, if I had to say one thing of how Oklahoma State won that game, I would point to the turnovers. But it was almost so lopsided, physically seeming, that shouldn't have mattered. It felt like, but it didn't.
Yeah. Now, I've asked Gundy in the last two press conferences, I asked him this same question, basically. First time about the running game, second time about the defense. Because I look at the issues they had the two different games, running the ball and then with the big plays on defense. And defense in particular felt very different.
Yeah.
With South Dakota State, it was big pass plays, guys running wide open. Now, there was a little bit of that as well, but the big gashes up the middle of the run defense seemed to be the more concerning issue on Saturday, I felt. The run game, I can't tell exactly whether is it physicality that they're not matching? Is it a scheme? I don't know if there's a consistent through line that are causing the two issues. You mentioned he said it's fixable, and this is a week where you've got to go fix it.
Yeah.
Now against Tulsa, you got to go show that you can prevent big plays and run the ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this feels like a mojo game for your offensive line to get some confidence in those guys. The confusing part about it is they've been so good in pass protection,
right?
And seemingly so. And like I said, we maybe aren't breaking down the game on a snap by snap level of what this guy's steps and his hand placement and things like that. But it just kind of seems like they're getting bullied up front when run blocking, but they're good at pass blocking. And if you're watching the video of this, you know that I'm a $155 and have no clue what I'm talking about on the offensive line. But I feel like I've heard offensive linemen in the past say that it's easier to run block because you're being the attacker,
right?
As to where if you're in pass pro, you're just kind of shuffling your feet and trying to stop a guy. So that's a little confusing. How they could be so good at pass pro, but not go downhill and stuff like that. And then Sam Pittman said post game they were trying to force Ollie to go to the outside because they said if he gets his hips flipped, it's not going to end well. And it felt like Oklahoma State's best runs were when they just went with that and pitched it to Ollie on that side. So maybe you need to get that a little sooner. Another question I had in watching it is that Gavin Freeman had 9 snaps, I believe it was, in that game, and some of those were when Brennan came out. So that meant Oklahoma State wasn't running a ton of 4 receiver sets.
Right.
And if you're getting, if stuff's getting clogged up in the middle, you'd think, hey, let's spread the ball out. You love the tight end, I love the tight end, everybody loves the tight end.
Yeah.
But maybe a tight end and a fullback in a formation when the middle's already getting clogged isn't the best thing. But I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it feels like this week against Tulsa is probably the worst team that you played thus far. I think Tulsa's taken some steps under Kevin Wilson, but I think this has got to be a good mojo game for both, the defense to stifle some of those big plays and the offensive line to just kind of bully a group and get confident about it.
When you talk about them getting Ollie outside, it's like I wrote this in my game story. Like the touchdown in the second overtime felt too easy.
Yeah.
It was like, where has this been all game? And the fact that it's great that they called it in that situation, but it felt like something they could have done a little more frequently during the game. That and maybe throwing him the ball a little bit more just to get the ball in his hands. But even then, when he did, he only had, I think a 10-yard gain was his longest pass play too. So it's all very interesting to see how this is going to develop. I think back to last season, obviously the quarterback situation was derailing everything. But even then, the offense was kind of hit and miss, like what we're seeing now. And the offensive line found its footing, I think, really kind of in the second half against South Alabama, and then obviously you get Bowman in there as the main guy, and they really develop from there. I'm curious to see what the next step is for this offensive line, because we've all talked all year, all off season, about how this veteran group is one of the most experienced offensive lines of all time at the college level, and you've got all these guys back, but there's just something that doesn't seem to be clicking with that group right now, and it's just really hard to diagnose what it is.
Yeah, and you wonder if it's just teams just selling out at this point to say,
right.
Hey, we're stopping Ollie Gordon. Because, maybe last year, especially those early teams they were playing, maybe Ollie was catching them by surprise. And then maybe late in the year, you're kind of like, well, we're going to do, to some extent, what we've been doing all season. And we'll, throw a little bit here and there to try and stop Ollie Gordon. But maybe going into these games now, teams are just all in, focused on Ollie, and kind of able to stuff him down. And I think Arkansas's defensive backs did a good job of just kind of sticking to OSU's receivers. So, we both think Oklahoma's receiver room is really good, or Oklahoma State's receiver room is really good right now. It just kind of felt like in that first half in particular, even Bowman was a little off on some throws, but it felt like there wasn't a ton of open space for him to be throwing into anyway. So, yeah, it kind of just seemed like not only was Arkansas dominating the line of scrimmage like they were, but whenever they did elect to pass, Bowman wasn't totally accurate, and then on top of that, those receivers weren't getting a ton of space until Brent Presley got loose in the second half.
The game that Bowman had, obviously it aligns with the entire team, really, because he was really solid on that first drive. They go right down the field, have the two guys run into each other on the fourth down play. But he had been good on that drive, and then it was like a pitcher that suddenly loses the strike zone and just can't throw a fastball down the middle, and then comes out after halftime and it's all better, and he's throwing darts
and finger guns.
In fact, that was I thought maybe his most impressive throw of the day was that throw deep to Brennan Presley, and I get he was fired up about it and did the finger guns and all that, but it's like, don't you want to wait till you score first before you go and start shooting the finger guns? But anyway, different topic. But I think that the way he played in the second half kind of reassures me that week one wasn't an anomaly. That he really is going to be at a different level this season with his consistency, with his decision making. You mentioned he hasn't been sacked. The offensive line deserves a lot of credit for that, but he gets some too, because he is getting rid of the ball quickly, getting out of the pocket when he needs to, but not getting out too fast like he was doing last year some, or throwing off his back foot when he felt pressure coming. So he's settled in and is much more comfortable, and I think that a lot of the next few weeks, not so much this week because we talked about Tulsa's talent level, but then you got Utah, then you got at Kansas State. West Virginia, I think, is a solid team. That's where Bowman is really going to have to be the guy that opens this offense up by making the throws that he needs to make, then loosen things up and get Ollie going. There's going to be a lot of games, I think, in that late September, early October stretch where you don't maybe waste a bunch of Ollie carries early in the game. You're going to save him up for late, try to get him involved and do his stuff second quarter and on. But I think where I was going with this is I think Bowman really is showing that he's made some significant strides since last season.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that comes from not only all of his experience and being in the system a whole year, but I think even not having this fall camp to just know that he's the guy. I'm sure that's done wonders for him in terms of confidence, in terms of like understanding walkthroughs and things along that nature, getting into a rhythm. So yeah, I don't think, there were a lot of Twitter users unhappy with Alan Bowman in the first half in particular of that Arkansas game. But Oklahoma State basically rolled him out there and said, hey, you've got to beat this SEC team because we can't run the ball.
Right. Yeah.
And that wasn't happening for him early, and then it was, and he was shooting finger guns. And the finger guns, I sort of liked it. He's very professional. He's very by the book, especially with us, talking with us. It was kind of nice to see him have a little moxie to him a little bit. And, people were obviously upset, and it wasn't not ideal. Don't need a 15-yard penalty from your seventh-year quarterback.
Right.
But I don't know that in the end it played that big a role. I think Oklahoma State was going to try and sit on the ball, run the clock out, kick a field goal anyways. They made the field goal with or without that penalty, so I think no harm, no foul, except for the quite literal foul.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Allen's taken steps forward. Obviously, Saturday that's not going to go in his greatest games category by any means. But they basically asked him to beat an SEC defense because they couldn't run the ball.
Right. And the fact that he came back from that first half and played the way that he did, not perfect in the second half, but way, way better, was really vital and I think important to just his confidence going forward, because I do think this offseason was very beneficial for him, like you alluded to. So last thing before we get to the Stonecloud six-pack, it was an interesting Mike Gundy press conference today.
Yeah,
kind of all over the place. Talked a lot about parity. Talked about the expenses of the NIL world and the transfer portal. Whenever he gets asked a question, and he did this a couple of times today, do you want the coach speak answer or the truth? Obviously, we always say truth.
Yeah.
I still don't always feel like he's going full truth with us. There's always a little bit that's held back. Today, that was not the case, particularly on the question about Obi Ezigbo, when he said he was the guy we could afford, basically. He was inexpensive. I think inexpensive was the word that he used. So
yeah,
I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, it was Gundy pressers are usually a little chaotic.
Yeah.
But today did seem a little more. Just turn the dial up just a little bit. You mentioned the Ezigbo stuff. He mentioned that there's players in the portal that I don't know how true this is because I'm not in there, but he said people were getting $300,000 just to take an official visit. Yeah,
right.
Somewhere, and he said that they just mark those guys off right away because they're not in the running for those guys. So that was interesting. Obviously, he said it was fixable. Some of those plays. We talked up a lot of Obi Ezigbo and Nick Martin, Trey Rucker, and it's crazy because Ezigbo and Martin both earned Big 12 honors while being on a defense that gave up 648 yards of offense. So if you need to know how chaotic that game was, look no further than two guys on a defense that got slaughtered, earning weekly awards in the Big 12. So
exactly.
Yeah, it was just it was a little chaos. Maybe it was we went on a Boone tour before then. Maybe we were just maybe it was us, not him.
So.
Dogs walk in, dogs leave. It was there was a lot going on today, but it was good, Mike Gundy. I think that. Whenever he said that, do you want the truth or not the truth? I was like, well, he's usually pretty candid with what he says to us. So I was like, I don't know where this is going to go.
Exactly.
But, him talking about, some of the financial struggles. And he started talking about, he always references the judge, if she's going to sign off on this or not. Well, today he said he doesn't think that's coming right away. He flipped on that. So maybe we got another year or two of this kind of influx period before guardrails start getting set for NIL.
Yeah. And it's not really a salary cap, but it's like okay, everybody's going to have this much money to spread around, where it's going to be a different aspect to what this looks like. And but yeah, he seems to think that might not be coming as quickly as we all thought it was. So that'll be interesting to follow, because he didn't say who he talked to, but he had a conversation last night, he said. So very fascinating whenever he gets into to things like this. Now, we brought up Obi Ezigbo. We need to address this. Because I do think it's the most important thing that's going on with this team right now. Collin Oliver done. So Saturday night, Gundy said he thinks he's done for the year.
Which was a surprise, because Gundy, whenever McLean Baxley asked that question, I was like, he's about to get yelled at.
Yes, exactly.
And then Gundy just came right away and said, I think he's done for the year. I almost thought he was being sarcastic just because of how little he usually talks about injuries.
Exactly.
And how blunt he was just right off the rip there. So I was like, not that I almost started chuckling or anything, but I was like, oh, this is a joke. No, it wasn't a joke. So
not a joke.
He went right away. Obviously, stuffing blow for Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
The guy that could have broke this Leslie O'Neal sack record. All those storylines for us go right down the window. But more importantly, it just sucks because Collin's such a good dude. When we talk to him, he's great to talk to. He's always very candid with us. Unfortunate for Collin, unfortunate for Oklahoma State, unfortunate for me that covers the team. That's a big hole that Xebo's going to need to fill. He looked good on Saturday.
Yeah, he did.
I think he had 2 sacks.
Yeah, 3.5 tackles for loss.
Yeah, and his whole year as a starter at the D2 level last year, I think he had 7.5 sacks. So he's like coming up on those numbers already. Yep. So you hope that you keep getting some mileage out of him, but you're going to need a Deshaun Brown or Jaleel Johnson to kind of step up into that next role and say, hey, I'm here now. Like, I've got this. You're going to need some help rushing the passer with how struggling this defense has been so far.
Yeah, that's the thing that they put all this effort into remaking this defensive front and tinkering with things, and the big piece of it was getting Collin Oliver on the defensive line, coming off the edge more frequently. And now you take that out, and Gunny alluded to it, there might have to be some structural changes to make this work and be able to do the things that they need to do. I have an idea. Gunny did not say this at all, but in terms of finding ways to help out. I mean, you can't throw Obi out there for 93 plays like they had on Saturday. Absolutely. Somebody else is going to have to play that position. Why not Kittle Daniels?
Yeah, I don't hate that either. Straight from safety to the defensive line.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how often that's been done. He's drawn a lot of, maybe this is only in my head, Isaiah Simmons comparisons, because Isaiah Simmons was kind of out of Clemson. It's kind of that first guy that was just like a hybrid defensive player. Like, was he a defensive end? I don't know. Was he a safety? I'm not sure. He could have been a linebacker too. So. I don't hate that idea at all. A little on the taller side, you wonder if he can get under some of those offensive linemen.
There'd be some technique he would have to learn.
But I think just in terms of, he should be faster than most defensive ends.
Right.
Obviously he has strength at his side. Is long rangey. If somebody's coming by, he can grab him. So I think I like that idea. I could get down with a little Kendall Daniels coming off the edge.
And I mean, and they've proven that they love Jeff Robertson as the other linebacker. They're playing him a lot more than I expected, even. So. You mix him in with Nick Martin, who's having another fantastic year, and then do some creative things with Kendall. I think you can at least keep people off balance and give yourself a chance with some stuff. And then maybe if it's not him, maybe it's guys like you mentioned, Jaleel Johnson, Deshaun Brown. Iman Oates, I've been really impressed with. He's more athletic than I ever anticipated for a guy that was kind of he wasn't getting a lot of buzz in the recruiting world, coming from NEO, Tulsa kid, who I'm actually writing about later this week if you want to check that out. But he's going back home and very excited about that. I did not expect the type of development we've seen from him. So
I actually asked him, because he was listed as a defensive tackle, but then on the depth chart, maybe he was a defensive end.
Right.
So I asked him, I was like, what makes you so versatile in that? And he said, growing up playing basketball.
Yeah.
He said that like his sophomore years when he started playing football because he got too big and a coach came up to him and said, hey, you're coming over here this fall. So and he was a good interview too. I think he's Ollie Gordon's roommate. I'm sure that I'm just spoiling your story right now.
No. I don't get into that very much. There's some really fun stuff with that.
So it felt like all year, last year after the season, Ollie Gordon was at all these sporting events. And he was getting all this publicity for being at all these sporting events. And literally right behind him in pretty much every picture that is available is Iman Oates standing there. So it's been cool getting to experience. We talked about him, talking with him. He said it's been cool for him to get to experience all this kind of through Ollie's eyes in a way to where he's the most famous person in Stillwater. So I'm looking forward to a little bit more Iman Oates.
Yeah. Ollie had a fun story about how the last 2 weeks they've jumped into the student section at Boone Pickens. And both times it's been Ollie on the ground helping Iman down. And he's like, I don't know why it's not the other way around, why he's not catching me coming off the wall. It would make more sense that the 300-pounder would come down first. But Ollie's a team guy.
And Brendan Presley told a story that he was jumping up there at the end of last week's game, and he was just dangling there for a second because nobody was pulling him up. And that's a man that got 19 balls thrown to him that day. He needs a little help getting up there.
Exactly.
So, that's fun stuff.
Yeah, it is. Quick question. I didn't tell you this one was coming.
I love it.
Name the 3 favorite guys to talk to on this team.
Ooh.
Because I got thinking about this because Collin is high on the list. I'm going to really miss talking to that dude.
Collin's high on the list. I love Nick Martin. Talking with Nick Martin, and sometimes he's like good in comedic ways, and he's bantering with you back and forth. Right. And then other times it's like sort of like Glenn Spencer. Remember talking to Glenn Spencer, and he's almost giving you war stories. Whenever you talk to Nick Martin, you get kind of that vibe too, where he's like, it's a violent game and things along that nature. So I love that. I love Brennan. I feel like there's sometimes where Brennan's like, I don't want to do this, which I totally understand, with as much as they throw him in front of us too.
Yes.
But you never know what's going to come out of Brennan's mouth. So love that about Brennan. Who would be number 3?
I'll throw out a few while you're thinking.
Okay.
I've been a big fan of Alan Bowman.
Yeah, Allen's been good. Allen's been stereotypical quarterback. Good.
Yeah, exactly. Iman Oates was fun. Only talked to him the one time, but really enjoyed him. We never get to talk to punters, but Hudson Cock is a blast.
Yeah, he was. He was
really,
a good time.
Really enjoyed talking to him. Trying to think of some other defensive guys.
Colin Clay, very good, very well spoken. Colin
He
Clay.
is. He's really solid. He's a lot of fun too. So, Joe Michalski is kind of low key, entertaining.
Sometimes I don't realize it while I'm talking to Joe, just how kind of dry his humor is. And then when I'm typing the quotes out afterwards, I'm like, man, he was killing it up there. And we weren't giving him any reactions at all. So I need to be more of an active listener when listening to Joe Michalski.
Right. Listen, he dropped my favorite joke that any player has ever turned in an interview a couple of years ago when he was just starting to play a lot. I said, okay, I've seen the pronunciation guide, but I want to make sure that I'm saying your name right. So tell me how to say your name. And he goes, Joe.
Yeah,
and I was done.
Yeah,
I couldn't function the rest of the day. I was like, that's freaking brilliant.
That's outstanding.
It is.
There's a lot of pronunciation guides, even whenever it's on the guide. Freshman quarterback, it's on the pronunciation guide. Still have no clue.
Nope. He's Smitty to me.
Yeah, I ask Dejan Stribling. Almost every time we get him, I'm like, is it Dejan? Is it Dejan? He's like, Dejan. He's like, how many times you got to ask me this, old man? So, a lot of pronunciation guys, but Michalski's definitely up there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, with that, I think it's time that we jump into the Stonecloud six-pack. As always, 3 questions about the game or the season coming up here, and then we'll have our draft, which is a fun one today. I know it's a challenge, but it's I think a fun one. So the first one right out of the gate, got to have an Ollie question every week in the Stonecloud six-pack. Right off the top, Ollie, over or under 3.5 touchdowns this week against Tulsa? And that's I realize I'm setting the number high, but I feel like this is going to be a kind of this year's breakthrough that kind of gets things on track for him.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take. I think I'm going to take the under. I think it's going to be 3 though. I think it's going to be at 3. I think 3.5 is a good line to have it. I'm going to say 2 on the ground, 1 through the air, and then I think there's going to get to a point where they're saying, hey, let's maybe not have him carry the ball 30 times. Let's get Sessi in there. I think they really like Sessi based on how much they put him in against Arkansas.
Exactly.
So I think the game will, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you're hoping it gets to this point where Ollie's not needed, and get him some rest, and get Sessi and Trent Howland, who I don't think I got to carry.
Yeah, I don't even know that he saw the field very much at all last week. So I'm with you. I think you get both of them. I think Ollie has a big first half. I think back to 2019.
Yeah, the Chuba game.
Chuba went crazy up there. I can see those kind of numbers. I'm going to take the over.
Okay.
I think he gets 4 touchdowns, possibly all in the first half. We'll see. All right, moving on to number 2. I might have set the number 2 low on this one after I didn't realize until I was doing some research over the weekend that Trey Rucker leads the nation in tackles right now, averaging 16 a game, 32 total through 2 games. But my number is 9.5. But just because my question is he going to have another double-digit tackle game, a third in a row?
I think if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you almost hope that he doesn't, because that means somebody in front of him is making a tackle.
Right.
So I think I'm going to take the over still. I don't think he's going to hit 16 or 17 like he has been the last couple of weeks. I think I'm going to take the under, or I'm going to take the over, but it's going to be 10, 11, maybe not 16, 17.
So if I had set the number, say 13.5, you're probably taking the under?
I think I would, just because, like I said, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, at some point, somebody before Trey Rucker has got to get a tackle. He's been really good in run support. I went through, I think, 11 of his tackles from Saturday. Because sometimes if a defensive back gets a lot of tackles, you're like, is this because he's getting the ball caught on him a lot?
Right.
But I think 11 of his tackles were ball carriers, were runners. So he's just coming down in run support. I think I would take the under if it was 14.5. But with 9.5, I'm going to take the over and somewhere in between there.
I like it. I'm going over. I think you'll have another double digit for sure. I should have just set the number at 13.5 because I probably would have been in your range too. I think the number comes down a little bit this week, but I think that he's going to be involved a lot. They do have some slot receivers that they like to get the ball to, which can get him in having to make tackles in space. Camden Benjamin, their number 1 receiver, is a real big play threat. Kirk Francis, a good quarterback, but young. I think they can take advantage of him. I don't think it's a huge danger, but that said, I do think that there'll be a lot of situations for him to make some tackles in the middle of the field.
And he's one of those guys that just all hustle all the time. He's gonna, even if he's maybe not in the play, he's gonna show up there. So,
absolutely.
So he's gonna get some tackles just like that.
Yes, exactly. All right, number 3, the final question for the first half of the Stonecloud 6-pack. We talked about Collin Oliver. I thought there was a good chance, particularly after the way he played in the first game, that he was going to get the, what was it, like 10.5 sacks now that he needs, or 10, something like
10
that?
10.5 away right now,
to surpass Leslie O'Neal for the all-time lead. Not going to happen this year. So my question now is, who leads this team in sacks this season?
Yeah, I wanted, because you sent me the question, spoiler alert, beforehand. I wanted to say Obi just because of how much he was around the quarterback. Gunny mentioned today too. There were a couple times that he was right there. Taylor Green rolls out and finds a way out of it.
Yeah.
But I just don't know that I've seen enough from Obi to fully jump on that hype train yet. So with that being said, I'm going to go with another crazy person, Nick Martin. He's tied with Collin last year, and like Trey Rucker, he is just always around the ball. So yeah, I think I'm going to go Nick Martin. Got a sack against South Dakota State, so already off the board a little bit. I think I'm going to go Nick Martin.
I like it. That's a really good place to start. Like you said, he's got a knack for that. Sometimes it's just chasing a guy down when they've been flushed out of the pocket. Those type of things that he's really good at. So I cannot disagree with that, but I'll just for the sake of being different, I'm going to go. I really have a weird feeling about Jaleel Johnson and what he's going to become this year.
Physically, like looks-wise, definitely looks the part, and that's kind of grown throughout his time here. I saw Jaden Foreman. This is off topic completely. I saw Jaden Foreman stand on the sideline. He's a defensive tackle now.
Yes,
he's a big dude.
He is.
They've still got him listed at defensive end. I think whenever he gets playing finally, I think he's going to be defensive tackle.
Yeah, well, I think they've even got him listed at like 305 now.
Yeah, that's a lot of dudes. So yeah, Jaleel Johnson certainly looks the part, and Deshaun Brown, obviously high-level recruit.
Right, exactly.
You could see him doing it. Cody Walterscheid's never been a big sack guy.
Yeah, that's never really been
career.
Kind of his forte.
So yeah, I think it'll be one of those guys. Jeff Roberson, you wonder just because he's out there so much, but I think I'm still taking Nick Martin over that. And then Obi could play in, but yeah, I think Jaleel Johnson's a good shout.
I'm really intrigued by what he's going to do. I wrote a story about him when he was just going into his senior year, and he was like 215 pounds, and even he didn't think that he was ever going to be 260 and maintain the speed that he has, and he's done a good job of it. That's big credit to Rob Glass, of course. So, all right, well, that brings us to the draft. As you know, as a faithful listener/viewer of the podcast. I've
been listening to this podcast since you guys have been doing it on the way back to Oklahoma City, avoiding wildlife. So it's been an honor.
Well, glad to have you here. But so you know the draft. I'm such a nice guy that I always let the guest host go first. This week we are drafting Kevins. People named Kevin, characters named Kevin, fictional, real, doesn't matter. The tie-in, there's always a tie-in. Kevin Wilson, the coach of the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, in a past life, many moons ago, I had a job covering OU for a couple of years, and Kevin Wilson was the offensive coordinator. And I was in a conversation with him at one point, and he gave me what I thought was about to be the greatest compliment I had received in my life until that moment. I had done a story on him, and he was giving all the other reporters a hard time about something that they'd been saying. I didn't remember the storyline, but he said, "This is the only guy who points at me that can get anything right." And I'm a young reporter still at this point. This is like 2006, 2007. I'm still a young guy, and I'm like like outside stone cold, but inside I'm like freaking out, trying to figure out what's about to happen. And then he said, "Yeah, he's written the best story that's ever been written about me." And then I realized that a week before I had done a story. We used to do this. Now you think about like a Q&A, where you're like the question and then the entire answer. We did a Q&A style thing, but we took out the questions. So all of my words were taken out.
Yeah.
All that was left was 20 inches of Kevin Wilson quotes.
Well, hopefully you asked some good questions that day.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But it was all his words, so it was the best story that was ever written about him. He was very proud of that, and once I realized it, I came back down to earth. But I did enjoy covering him at that time. He was an interesting guy to get to talk to. So That said, we're drafting Kevin's, and the first round, it's all to you.
Jacob always gives me a hard time, not to make another Jacob reference, but always gives me a hard time for not being a big Parks and Rec guy. And I'm not. I've started the first season 4 times, I think, and I just can't get out of it. And they say it's like The Office, and that if you just keep going, you'll see that light. I do love The Office. Kevin Malone, the #1 pick.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, makes great chili, spills it sometimes.
Yeah, it happens.
Kind-hearted man, Kevin Malone.
Fantastic. I did have him on my list. I was not thinking about him for a #1 pick, but I cannot argue with that. My #1 pick is there's a couple of reasons that I was hoping I get to go with this guy #1. I go back to last week's draft when me and Joe Masato drafted breakfast food.
And nobody picked bacon, by the way.
And nobody picked bacon.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
the light bulb has gone off.
Exactly.
Okay.
My first pick to partially make up for last week, also because I loved the whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing that was going around for a while in the late 90s, early 2000s, whenever it was, how you could connect any actor to Kevin Bacon through 6 degrees. All of that stuff was a blast to me. I've loved lots of Kevin Bacon's movies, so I'm going with Kevin Bacon #1 in my first round pick.
I love that. I googled actors named Kevin. And I'm not very good with actors' names. I found out throughout my life. So I was like, okay, Kevin Bacon, that's this guy. All right, my #2 pick. I didn't have Kevin Bacon on my list. I think their last name in Home Alone, Kevin McAllister. Is it McAllister?
Nailed it.
Resourceful. Takes out 2 grown adult men.
Absolutely.
What more could you need? Lives on his own.
Yeah.
Goes out and gets a toothbrush or whatever he got at a convenience store. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go Kevin McAllister for my second fictional Kevin pick.
Nothing wrong with that. I'll be honest. I almost went #1. If I hadn't had the Kevin Bacon thought, Kevin McAllister probably would have been my #1 pick.
And I'm not sure there's any more in pop culture than the mom yelling Kevin. Yeah, so I think that's the most Kevin one could get.
Yes, I fully agree. That was when I came up with the idea for this draft. That was the first one that came to mind because of that moment. So, very nice #2 pick. I'm really liking what you're putting together with your draft here so far. #2, I'm going to go with another pop culture reference that's a little before your time. Not sure how familiar you are with the Wonder Years.
That sounds familiar.
That look tells me all I need to know. Kevin Arnold was the main character of the Wonder Years. Fantastic show. It was about this family I think it was set in the 70s at the time. I haven't watched it in a while, so it's been a minute. But
I know what bouncy balls are. I do not know what the Wonder Years.
Do not know about the Wonder Years. That's understandable. But Kevin Arnold, played by Fred Savage, fantastic character. That was kind of sort of the start of Fred Savage's career blowing up before he became all that he became. So I was always a big fan of the show. I was pretty close to Kevin Arnold's age at the time that it was on, so kind of connected with him, and huge fan of the show and of Kevin Arnold. So that's my #2 pick. Now to you for your third and final pick.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I've got a lot of Kevin still on the board because I wrote down 6 because that's the most that was going to happen.
That's safe. Yeah, that's safe.
There's a basketball player, right? That I'm not picking Kevin Durant. I think you know this about me. I'm a pretty big professional wrestling guy.
Right.
I don't keep up with it as much as I used to. Big Diesel, Kevin Nash. To round out my team, you got Kevin Malone running point. You've got Kevin McAllister keeping the baddies away, and then you've got Kevin Nash just being cool. Big Diesel. So other options. I don't want to steal any of yours, but Kevin Hart, he kind of gets. Yeah. His movies aren't all great. One underrated Kevin Hart movie that I did want to mention, what's it called? I wrote it down, The Wedding Ringer. I love that movie. I think it's a really good movie that nobody really talks about.
I'm with you there.
He's got if you haven't seen it, he's a for-hire service for people who need a best man, and he's got to pull off what's called the Golden Tux, I think is what they call it, where he's got to get 7 groomsmen, and he's going to be the best man for this wedding for somebody that he doesn't even know. So, it was going to go with Kevin Hart, but I think Kevin Nash rounds out my team pretty well.
That's really solid. I thought about Kevin Hart as well. Also thought about Kevin Durant.
I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, I couldn't. I actually own a pair of KDs. I made a really poor decision and bought them the spring before, like at the end of his last season in Oklahoma City.
I can do you one better because it happened on the 4th of July. No,
Correct.
That thing. For that 4th of July, I was so confident that Kevin Durant was going to re-sign and be an Oklahoma City Thunder that I bought for the 4th of July a Durant Westbrook 2016 shirt, whatever year that was.
Right.
So I still have it. It's comical at this point, but at the time, that's not what I wore for the 4th of July. So I had to go find a new outfit for our little cookout or whatever that we had together.
Did you ever get to wear it?
I wear it now sarcastically, so that people
yeah.
are like, "Oh, I get that. That's a funny joke." But maybe at some point, I think I'm starting to forgive Kevin Durant a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's just natural. Very good basketball player. But I even wrote down Kevin Garnett and Kevin Love. I was prepared to take 2 basketball Kevins before Kevin Durant. So.
Yeah, you could have gone a full NBA team.
Yeah. I was not going to pick Kevin Durant, but not a bad Kevin if you really think about it.
No, not at all. I'm gonna round it. This feels like a weird last pick. It's one that's means a lot to me because his movies were kind of a formative time of my life, and I think he still does good stuff now. But I'm going with Kevin Smith, the director. Are you familiar with Jay and Silent Bob? Mallrats? No. Okay. Anyway, there were some really good movies.
I'm willing to listen.
There were some really good movies back in the late 90s, directed by Kevin Smith, who also played a character. He was Silent Bob. There were Jason Mewes, who still goes around. I think he's doing like some stand-up comedy. He still does some acting. He was Jay, and then there was Silent Bob, who never spoke, except for a couple of times throughout the entire movies. But they went on. They were kind of side characters in some of the early movies. Then later on, they had an actual movie about them and different things. Anyway, I was taking some film classes during college and learning about some of the stuff that he was doing in his movies when he was directing his movies. I was fascinated by it. I think if I made a list of the 3 jobs that I would be doing if I had gone any direction I could have, I would say movie director probably would have been top 3. Not a real easy job to get.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think there's a ton of those out there.
No, and I mean, you go on Indeed, you don't really see those just laying around. But anyway, Silent Bob was one of my favorite concepts of a movie and or of a movie character, and had some great stuff in the movies that he produced back then, especially. Not so much anymore. He doesn't do a lot of work these days. But anyway.
I also had Kevin James written down. No, King of Queens, not a bad Kevin.
No.
Similar to Kevin Hart in that lately he's been in a bunch of movies that maybe film critics wouldn't look too fondly on. Yeah. I liked Grown Ups. I liked King of Queens.
Same.
But yeah,
Same.
I think those are some good Kevins.
That was a solid Kevin draft.
Yeah.
Right there. I like it. Very good. Well, with that, I thank you again, Marshall, for stepping in, and probably going to need to lean on you at some point a few more times this season as I need somebody to come sit here and drink beer with me. So with that, we will wrap it up from here at Stonecloud. Thank you for all of you who have been either watching or listening to the Cowboy Chronicle.